Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Well, I'm in the middle of a project, so I don't have anything put together to really show you right now as far as an extended video, so I scam through that period of time by doing something else, like talking about some car I had. So I call these segments Let's Talk About. So in this segment, I thought we would talk about this car that you see in front of you. This is a 1968 Ford XL. That's it's not spelled EXCEL. It's just the two letters X and L, Ford XL. And it's also not called a 500 XL. It's not called a Galaxy 500 XL. It's just simply called this model that you see there. The two-door fastback was just called an XL, Ford XL. So anyway, this is a car I owned sometime around 2006 or 2007, that time frame, and that was right after I'd moved to my mother's house at the other location where I started making videos. That's the house there in the background. That's the driveway. You've seen those in my early videos, and that's the front end of that 78 Buick wagon I was actually driving daily at that time. So anyway, I thought I would share with you the story of how I found this car and what it was. So let's get into it, shall we? So back then, before YouTube, I was still doing the car buying and selling thing, and I was just simply just buying and selling anything that I was interested in. So I didn't really have a point to it. I was just doing it. When you like cars, like anything that runs off gasoline or diesel, that's just kind of what you do. So I knew about this guy that had these 3 car lots, and they're out kind of in the middle of nowhere. They're on a major highway, and I'm about to show you where they're at. It's no secret. And he had one at his house, had several stuff just packed in around it, and then he had a couple others that were further away. So I knew that the one that was the most far away from his house that he lived at had a lot of old iron in it, as they call it, old cars and trucks. He had all kinds of stuff. He had some modern stuff in there. He had old cars, old trucks. He had buses, some implements and stuff. He's just one of these people that is the worst kind of person to ever buy an old car, for him to buy it, because all he was going to do is just, I don't know if he's trying to fund a retirement or what he was doing, but he's just buying all these old cars from people and just letting them sit. So, of course, that's not good for an old car to do that. I know that firsthand myself. So, he had this lot that was just kind of out there in the middle of nowhere on the side of a mountain, and so I'd already bought a truck from him. I actually turned out to buy a good truck from him. It was a 1991 Ford F-250 diesel, sort of like the blue one I bought later on, but that one was tan. So I knew that he had stuff in there, and so I had done some trading or some selling, and I had sold something, I think. So I had a few $1,000s on me that I wanted to buy something else. So I went to his house and got permission to go down there and look around his lot down there, his out in the boonies lot, I call it, just to see what was out there, because, everything was for sale. So here's the overhead shot of this place where I was looking around at, and it's kind of grown up more now than it is, but if you want to, there's names, you want to look where it's at, feel free to. But anyway, this is Highway 431, and you're coming up the mountain here, and you're just about to get to the top of the mountain right here, and there's a road up here. And this place, like I said, it's grown up more now, but back then it was pretty open right here, and there's a road right in through here, and there's a road right through here, and then there's cars and trucks and all kinds of stuff scattered all the way through here. There might be 100 to 120 cars and trucks in there, I'd say. At least there was at that time. There was nothing that I would, if you're thinking like a lot of people would do, and I would, thinking, well, I need to get right down there and see what's actually in there. There might be something valuable. I don't think there was anything super value. He had some 4-doors, and he had a couple Cadillacs, and he had some Mercedes. He had just a little bit of everything. He didn't have any idea of what he was buying. He just bought it, just to have it and to try to resell it. So anyway, I don't think there's any, if you're thinking, well, there's a SS Camaro in there. There's SS Nova. There's a Ford Torino with a side or whatever. Some kind of Ford with a side oiler in it. No, it's just average stuff basically. So anyway, that day I was just out walking around here, and me and somebody, I think Uncle Phil went with me. That was before Uncle Phil was really Uncle Phil, but he was with me doing stuff then too. So we were out just trooping around this place. We were out in the woods, and we were just kind of looking around, and there wasn't anything that good in there so far. And so we were just kind of getting up towards the end of things. I mean, we were in the woods up here. I mean, there's like trails up here where you can drive something up and, you know, get in there, but it was trees and stuff. So anyway, all of a sudden we stumble on this car sitting there, this Ford sitting there in the woods, and it was parked backed in, you know, besides some other stuff. I think there was a Mercedes, like a 280 S EL or S, whatever they call those, early 70s. There might have been one on one side or two of them on one side. Doesn't matter. But anyway, it was just sitting there, and it was, you know, dirty. There were pine needles all over it, and the paint was all just filthy. But I got looking at this thing. I walked around this thing and looked at it, and it's all complete. It's all sitting on aired up tires, and you know, its hubcaps are all there. It's just not beat up. It's not dented. The paint's decent on it. I thought, wow, okay, we might just have a prospect here. So I went back up, and I didn't even look at any, you know, really look at it inside that close or anything. I think it was locked, actually. I couldn't look inside. But I did pop the hood, and it was, you know, everything was there. It wasn't seized up or anything. So I had no idea how long this thing had been sitting in there. So I went back up there and talked to the guy. His name's Grizz. Don't know why his name Grizz, but he's named Grizz, or his nickname is. So I went up there and negotiated with old Grizz about this car, and about 30 minutes later, I was the owner of this car. So I called a wrecker and paid the guy to get in there, and fortunately there was an open laneway, I guess you could call it, back into the forest in there to get the wrecker in there to get this thing picked out of there. And you know, we were going to try to get it started up there. No telling how long it had been sitting. I could tell, you know, it was sitting long enough. I could tell it was just not going to be an easy thing just to get it going right then and drive it away. So anyway, long story short, we brought it home, and first thing to do, of course, is clean it up, and it's just cleaned up as good as you see it here. This was not long after I had washed it and detailed it and waxed it. You know, just unbelievably nice car. And so, you know, the interior was a little bit weathered. Those, either you have ever seen a 68 or 67 Ford, you know they've got around the instrument panel, they have a kind of a pretty deep, like, surround around them, and it was kind of cracked up, but it wasn't bad. The seats were decent, carpet was decent, just all original. This car had never been touched. I mean, nothing ever been done to it. So I got it cleaned up and assessed what I had, and went forward with it. This was a 390, what they call a 2V, which is a 2-barrel 390 2-barrel automatic. I think this one had a C6 automatic in it. It may have had an FMX, but I think it had a C6, and it had something like a 275 open rear end in it. And I had the Marty report done on it, and it had been sold new in Albertville, and just wasn't a whole lot of options on it. It had air conditioning, power steering. It might have had disc brakes. I think it did. I'm not sure. But it was pretty low option. Wasn't anything real special about it. It wasn't as a bench seat, had the column shifter and all that. So I started working on this thing, my usual process even back then. So I wanted to get it running and see how it ran. And so it had to have a gas tank put in, and the carburetor was kind of gunged up on it. I could tell the carburetor needed some work on it. So I pulled the carburetor off, and first time when I rebuilt the carburetor, I noticed that I think I put it back on, and the accelerator pump was leaking. So I had to take that little cover off, and it was warped a little bit where somebody tightened the screws down too far. And so I had to kind of surfaced that down smooth and flat and put it all back together, and there's something else I had to do to it. I don't know if it was a solenoid was bad or something, but there was something fairly minor with the starting system. I think it was you might actually need a starter on it, because it didn't want to, either the starter was not working or something was acting weird about it. So I had to do that, and it just started right up and ran great. No problems at all with it, and the brakes worked. And I think it might have had the only thing I think may have been wrong with the engine was that it might have had a cracked exhaust manifold or a blown gasket in it, exhaust gasket or something like that. But so I just took it out and started test driving it and drove it around close to the house, and it just ran great. And I started driving it all over, and turns out that the guy that had it before it got parked in the woods up there was known to the crowd of people that I had been kind of hanging around with for quite a long time. We used to be in the Mustangs. Me and Uncle Phil both used to be in the Fox body Mustangs a lot, and that's going to be a subject of another video coming up at some point. So I was kind of getting out of it right then. I think I probably just had sold the last one right about the time I got this car. But that guy was known. He was like sort of like the local transmission guru at that point. So I knew his name and I knew who he was, but I didn't know him personally. But he was the one that had this car before he sold it to Grizz. And Grizz gave it the treatment by just taking a nice car like this and parking it out in the woods where it got dirty. Limbs could have went through the windshield, you know. So anyway, I don't know who owned it previous to that guy having it, but I drove it for about a month or two, and it was just a good running car. But like I said, I was back then, my attention span was not that long, and I was kind of keeping on looking around. It was not really what I was looking for at the time. Now I'd like to have it now for sure, because that'd be a nice car to just drive everywhere. But it was definitely, you know, a nice car. It had the retractable headlights, which worked. It had the wipers were neat on those, because you own those era cars. You know, when you turn them off and they park, you know, they're swiping back and forth. When you turn them off, they go partially up and then back down. So I think that's what they did. The wipers do something kind of interesting, but it was, like I said, it was a 390, but it was not a really fast car. You know, it was what it was. You know, I kind of put it up against a couple of cars that were pretty quick, and it just wouldn't stay with them. So, and I guess I think one of the reasons why I made the decision to go ahead and resell it, was because it was so original. You know, back then, as I guess now, just really, you know, you sort of, people like me, it's kind of hard to start modifying an original car like that. But nowadays I probably would be more inclined to do a lot of different things to it. But back then I just wasn't. I was too OCD about it. So anyway, I put it up for sale, and it sold fairly quickly. The people came and bought it from me. They came and picked it up, and they drove it to its new home, I think in way up north somewhere, Virginia, maybe West Virginia. So as far as I know, it made it just fine. So, but that's what it was, guys. That was the story of one of these cars that was previous to YouTube by a few years, and just one of these here 1 month and gone the next. And I'm sure it made somebody a real nice car. I was not, you know, it was a nice car. It just wasn't a very charismatic car. It didn't have a lot of personality, I guess. But they are fairly unusual, and you don't see them much anymore at all. I've never seen another one that I'm aware of. I've seen plenty of Galaxies, and you know, I think there was a Galaxy Fastback that was very similar to this one. But so anyway, I just wanted to share with you, and hope you were interested in seeing this 1968 Ford XL. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on another one. Bye bye.